What if you could just let go of your most persistent negative emotions? Today, we're diving into a technique that promises exactly that. It's called letting go. And we're going to explore not just how it works, but also why this seemingly simple path is so incredibly controversial.
You know that feeling, right? The emotional weight of anger or anxiety that just seems to stick to you no matter what you do. It can hijack your whole day. But what if there was a way to simply release it? Well, this is where the late Dr. David R. Hawkins enters the picture. He was a psychiatrist who later in his career introduced a really simple technique designed to help people find what he described as total emotional freedom. So here's the central idea from Hawkins. When we ignore or push down our negative feelings, they don't just vanish. He argued they get stuck inside us, kind of like energetic blockages that get in the way of our health, our happiness, our everything.
His answer to this was a mechanism he called letting go. He defined it as a way to consciously release all that built-up pressure. The goal isn't to fight or conquer the feeling, but to just allow it to be there until it runs out of energy and dissolves on its own. It's about liberation.
Okay, so that's the theory. Sounds pretty good, right? But how do you actually do it? What does it look like in the real world? The entire practice really hinges on one key word: surrender. Now, it's super important to get what Hawkins meant by this. This isn't about giving up or admitting defeat. It's about stopping the war with the emotion. You just let it exist without judging it or frantically trying to make it go away. The actual technique is boiled down to just two super simple steps. First, you observe. That means you tune in to the pure physical sensation of the emotion in your body. You know, the tightness in your chest, the pit in your stomach, without getting lost in the story behind it. And second, you accept. You just stop fighting it. You drop the resistance and just let it be. And here's the crucial part. You have to bypass your mind's endless chatter. All those thoughts, I can't believe they said that, or what if I fail? Hawkins says to just ignore them. He believed those are just stories we tell ourselves. The real work is focusing only on the raw energy of the feeling itself, until it just fades. Okay, now this is where things get really interesting and pretty controversial. Because that simple technique we just talked about, it's built on top of a much bigger, much more complex theory called the map of consciousness. So Hawkins developed this logarithmic scale from 1 to 1,000, and he claimed that everything, every single emotion, every thought, every person, has a specific vibrational frequency that can be pinpointed on this map. The most critical line on this entire map is at the level of courage, which calibrates at 200. According to Hawkins, everything below this line, emotions like shame, guilt, or fear, is what he called a state of force, which is life-draining. Everything above 200, like love, joy, and peace, is a state of power, which is life-affirming. So the whole point of letting go is to climb up this scale. So, according to Hawkins, as you let go of those lower energy feelings, you literally ascend this map of consciousness. And his proponents claim that if you practice this consistently, you can see some truly profound changes in your life. And the list of promised benefits is, well, it's incredibly broad. People who follow this report everything from healing physical issues to having way more energy, fixing relationships, and finding a much deeper sense of peace and spiritual connection. There's this one powerful story from his book about a man who is totally crippled by a lifelong fear of dancing. So after a year of practicing this letting go technique, he's at a party, he feels the anxiety, he surrenders to it, and then, boom, he suddenly finds himself dancing freely, moving into a state of absolute ecstasy. The idea is that releasing the block unlocked something that was in him all along. However, it's exactly these kinds of amazing claims, and especially the whole map of consciousness theory, that attracts some really intense criticism from the scientific and psychological communities. This is where things get complicated. And here's the real kicker. Despite Hawkins being a licensed psychiatrist with decades of experience, his work on consciousness is not accepted by mainstream science. In fact, many professionals in the field label it as pseudoscience, plain and simple. Critics point to some huge red flags. For starters, this whole idea that emotions have measurable vibrational frequencies, there's absolutely no scientific evidence for that. The map of consciousness itself has never been validated by any peer-reviewed research. And on top of that, presenting a single technique as a cure-all for almost any problem, well, that's a classic sign of pseudoscience. And this really gets to the heart of the whole conflict. Hawkins and his followers insist that his map of consciousness is an objective, verifiable truth about the universe. But his critics look at it and say, these are just arbitrary numbers. There is zero scientific proof to back any of this up. So, where does all of this leave us? Is letting go a brilliant tool for insight, or is it just a flawed philosophy?
What we're left with is this fascinating paradox. On one hand, you have a simple, practical technique for dealing with emotions that countless people swear has changed their lives for the better. But on the other hand, it's built on a theoretical foundation that is almost completely dismissed by the scientific community.
Which really forces us to ask a compelling question. Is this a profound psychological tool? Is it just a really powerful placebo, a kind of focused mindfulness, where your belief in it is the secret ingredient? Or is it some combination of both? Perhaps the real question isn't whether the map is real, but why a simple act of surrender can feel so incredibly liberating no matter what you believe.